Today we're going to take some rough sawn oak and pecan and make a nice mallet out of it. Here I am at my friend Mike Prost's house, and we're going to be sawing some lumber, raw lumber that we got at Oak Hill Ranch. And so here's a piece of wood here. We're going to see if we can't slice it up a little bit. We built this little jig to hold the logs. That way we could saw it on the bandsaw without having it rotate. The first cut was to get a flat side so we could then sit that on the surface of the bandsaw. So we have two cuts, one flat side on the bottom and one flat side up against the fence. And so now we're cutting little slabs about 1 inch thick. This is 1 inch, 4/4 sawn oak. Put it up here, dry out. This will be June and July and August coming up. This shed's likely to be 125 to 30 degrees. It should dry pretty quick. Okay, so I have a piece of rough lumber. It's not been planed and not been jointed. It's just really rough lumber. It's a piece of oak and it's really tough. It's got some knots running through here. So I'm putting it on my straight cut jig. So this is a pretty intricate setup, so let me show it to you close up. In my straight cut jig, this board is straight and it's cut parallel to the saw blade. This actually moves. So what we have done is marked our line approximately where we need to have this. So we're going to create a straight cut. So we've clamped down this board, which is uneven on the edges and all sides and all surfaces. So we're going to cut along this line right here and attempt to get this piece made for our mallet head. Now for our second piece. Alright, so we got these two pieces, so now we're going to attempt to cut that edge and get this a little square. Okay, now we have one flat edge, and we're going to attempt to cut this, make these two sides even, then we'll come back in and do that one as well. Sides and ends are square. Now we're going to have to shape that. Alright, so this is basically my tendon jig, but I'm basically going to use this to attempt to flatten or plane this surface of this by putting it in here, taking off, trying to get this side as straight as I can, and then flip it over and do the other side. So let's give it a whirl. This cut, you can see that the incision in the wood, the front, only gets a little bit. This piece of the wood is so bowed that we'll have to cut this a couple times to get it shaved down in a straight fashion. I flipped the block over, and now I'm cutting the other half of the block. Okay, so from this piece, you can see this part has no burn marks, so that's low. So when we put this on here, you can see that we have a gap in between there, and we need to get it to be flush. So when we put this up against the inside piece, it'll be flush. So we need to trim off just a smidgen more. I've got the 3 pieces here for one mallet. That's going to all be out of the custom resawn. All sides are square, all sides are square. Now we're ready to do the handle. Okay, now I've got my handle and I've marked off 1 inch from each end, and I've hit a score line on here, and now I'm just taking my chisel and basically just kind of trying to start out the so we can break this out a little bit, and we have this 1 inch line. Distinctively, we know that that's going to begin the reduction of the shape for the handle, and then we'll carve this down some so it'll be a more comfortable grip. So with that, let's continue to work on this. Here's where we are with this first mallet head. We have oak outside, pecan in the middle. So I've taken the square piece and I put a 10-degree taper on the head end, and so that thins it out a little bit. And so I'll end up probably routing this edge with or rather putting a little chamfer on it with my trim router. So now I'll have to work on the handle. So that pecan is actually pretty hard, so I bought something that's going to help me do that. I got a Spokeshave. So I'm going to try it out for the very first time, so let's see how it works. So I've adjusted this blade so it just comes out a little bit. Now look at there, that's not too bad. Sometimes on these Spokeshaves you want to have one side that's protruding out a little bit farther than the other. That way you can do a thick or a thin cut. After, I don't know, 20 minutes, I'm starting to get the hang of this. So the key is you gotta shape these curls out. The longer the curl, the easier. I've got some rough edges in here I hadn't quite figured out how to manage just yet.
Hey, if you have some tips on how to use this, please leave comments for me down below.
And I figured that learning that the front part of the blade, you got to kind of tilt that forward and down, and that's what gets the blade to bite. Okay, so my first attempt with the Spokeshave, I got the general shape that I'm looking for on my handle. It's smaller down here where you're going to have a grip, bigger down here so it doesn't slip out of your hand. So this is about the same on both sides, and this will go up into the mallet head and it'll fit like that. I've done a reasonable job of shaping. I've not done a good job of smoothing. That's a skill that I'm learning, and I'll perfect it and get a little bit better the more I use the Spokeshave. So I think it was worth the 20 bucks I paid for it. So in figuring out what we have here, now I have this easy enough to slide in. One of my mistakes I made is I cut my handle too narrow. So I'm gonna have to fill this gap in here. A couple of pieces in here that I've already shimmed up that will accomplish that. So I need to cut the slots in this piece that will run the length of this, that allow this tenon to be split into thirds and have it flex out when you put the wedges in. So I have my mallet and my handle dry fit, and I don't want to push my wedges in too far. I may not get able to get them out. So now I think I'm ready for a glue up. So I'm gonna take all these out. We'll start the glue process and let it set up. There we go. One mallet. This is a gift to my friend Bob, who gave me the wood for this. This is oak and this is pecan, and it turned out real well. I finished it with the Johnson paste wax. Brought out the nice grain in this pecan in here, and you can see it in there. So I'm real pleased with it. It's got a lot of heft to it. So I got another one to build. That'll be coming up next. But if you like this video and you learned something, be sure and give me a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of these, be sure and subscribe down below so you won't miss the next build. And as usual, come back and see me real soon.